I wasn't going to say a word, but now I'm intrigued. What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL video. And in this video, I want to rant about Brandon Aiyuk asking for a trade from the 49ers and the possibility of an absolute blockbuster trade between the San Francisco 49ers and the Las Vegas Raiders. And this has so much meat to it. There is so much content packed into this one potential trade. I'm talking the possibility of the 49ers not only trading Brandon Aiyuk like he asked, but trading him for Davante Adams. That's right. There is a rumor floating around the internet that one of the teams that is extremely interested in Brandon Aiyuk is the Las Vegas Raiders. And in order to make that trade happen, it would involve none other than the great future Hall of Fame, Davante Adams. So let's pull up the report and I'll give you my thoughts. Gronk spiked the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL news, reactions, just like this. So we have Davante Adams. We have Brandon Aiyuk swapping jerseys there. I believe that was in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. The Raiders are a team interested in trading for Brandon Aiyuk. This news, this report, comes from none other than Pretty Ricky 123231213. Doesn't really matter. Pretty Ricky says that the Raiders are a team interested in trading for Brandon Aiyuk. Aiyuk knows Antonio Pierce from ASU. Now, I am not too familiar with Pretty Ricky's work, but he does have a following. He is, I believe, an NFL insider, so take it with a grain of salt. But this does make sense. Even if this report is false, this still makes sense because Antonio Pierce knows Brandon Aiyuk from ASU. And once we start to connect the dots and think about Davante Adams wanting out of the Raiders, we've talked about the New York Jets potentially wanting to trade for Davante Adams, and there's been reports, rumors, circulation of Davante Adams not being happy with the Raiders because of the state of the franchise. Once you start to think about how this may come together, it actually ties together very, very nicely. He says, here's the fun part. The Raiders would send Davante Adams to the Niners in any trade. Underline any trade. So if a trade were to happen, Davante Adams would be in the trade for Brandon Aiyuk. Davante has no real money on his deal after this season. So this is where I want to transfer to the contract of Davante Adams. And so we see here, Davante Adams makes 16.8 in base salary in 2024 at 32 years old, guaranteed $16.89 million, which isn't actually bad at all. And then after this year, you see the zeros here in this guaranteed salary column. He makes zero guaranteed money, which would mean his contract could be completely reworked and pretty much does not exist if he were to be traded to, let's say, the 49ers or the Jets or whomever, right? So the Niners would be able to rework his contract. Now, why does this make sense, right? Let's think about it. Why does this make sense? Okay, well, Brandon Aiyuk is 26 years old. He's born in 1998. He just turned 26 years old. He's coming off a career season in which he was second in the NFL in yards per reception. He had over 1,300 yards, and he has the highest yards per target in a single year since 2006, according to ESPN. So That means Brandon Aiyuk is an elite player in the prime of his career that is looking to get paid. Understandable. He's on an absolutely loaded team that is already paying many players and still has to pay their franchise quarterback known as Brock Purdy. Davante Adams is going to be 32 years old, 6 years older than Brandon Aiyuk. He has never won a Super Bowl. He has never been to a Super Bowl. He has been close. He has tasted it, but he has never actually gotten there. He only has so many more years of very high-level play. Last year was somewhat a depressing season for Davante Adams. He still had over 100 catches and 1,100 yards and was still a very good player, but it was not the same caliber from Davante Adams from even the previous season of him leading the NFL in touchdowns with 15 in 2022 alongside Derek Carr. He spent 2 seasons with the Raiders. The coach that he signed with has already been fired, or he was traded for and signed. So there isn't really the affiliation and the tie to Davante Adams that McDaniels may have had. So there's already a little bit of a difference in between the general manager and Davante Adams, the relationship between the coach and Davante Adams. So there's that as well. They did sign Jacoby Myers. They did draft Brock Bowers. They are a young team that's in no real space to compete for a true Super Bowl. So what would make sense if you're the Raiders is we trade our veteran valuable receiver for assets. But why not trade him and maybe give a little bit more for a receiver that's arguably better than he is right now, and we get him at 26 years old and we can pay him the contract long-term to be our number 1 target. And our coach knows his personality. Our coach knows him already. And we know how he'll fit in the culture. Right? And it's close to home for Aiyuk as well when you consider Vegas and Arizona. So there's a lot of things here. Davante Adams could go to a team that's in a Super Bowl window at 32 years old. He could go to an offense that is similar to Matt LaFleur's, that he had a lot of success in. Arguably the most success of his career. Probably the most success of his career. Right? Let's just pull it up. Let's pull up the statistics for Davante Adams throughout the course of his career. As you guys can see here, 31 right now. He turns 32 in December. So he's not 32 till December. He still has 1 more year, basically. You've got 103 catches, 1,144 yards, 8 touchdowns. That was this year with not the greatest quarterback play, right? Aiden O'Connell, Jimmy Garoppolo. We've already seen how disgruntled Davante Adams looked on the receiver documentary. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, it's fantastic. We also saw the interworkings of Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, their importance to the 49ers culture, the 49ers team, the heartbeat of the 49ers. And notice how Brandon Aiyuk was not in that documentary. It was Deebo Samuel, it was George Kittle, not Brandon Aiyuk. Just saying, right? So you look at 2023, 103. He did have more catches than 2022, but he was an all-pro from 2020 through 2022. He had a 1,500-yard season in back-to-back campaigns in 2021 and 2022 with different quarterbacks. He led the NFL in touchdowns twice in 2020 and 2022. He led the NFL in yards per game in 2020, right? So when you look at this, I mean, this is Matt LaFleur right here, right? Matt LaFleur from 2019 through 2021, right? That was Matt LaFleur, if I'm not mistaken. That's an average of 107 catches, 1,300 yards in 14 games a season. That's crazy numbers. And why I bring up Matt LaFleur is he is from the Shanahan tree. Davante Adams would also, and Brandon Aiyuk would also be able to replace each other's role, right? They're both outside primary X receivers that run on the outside of the formation and are asked to win one-on-one against coverage. And Adams may not have the same yards after catch threat, but you could make a strong argument he's better at the release point, he's a better route runner, and he's probably got stronger hands. Aiyuk is the more explosive, younger player, right? When you look at Aiyuk, he's been less relied on in his career to be the go-to target, But last year, he had a better season. 75 catches for 1,342 yards, 17.9 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns. Right? He had a great year last year at 25 years old. And he was the number 1 target for Brock Purdy. So where Niners fans might not like this is that we lose a young target that can combine with Brock Purdy long-term to be a go-to in the offense for Kyle Shanahan. And that's probably what Kyle Shanahan would be concerned about. But if you can't figure out a contract, if you're the 49ers for Brandon Aiyuk long-term, the best solution would be to keep your Super Bowl window open to trade for somebody with the skill set and the ability and the hunger of Davante Adams at this stage in his career to directly basically replace what Brandon Aiyuk gives you with slightly different offerings and still be able to compete for a Super Bowl and then not actually be tied to a receiver long term and have to pay that type of money while you're also developing Ricky Pearsall in the offense, right? So this would be an ideal scenario if the 49ers are looking to trade Brandon Aiyuk. It would make perfect sense for them to get back a receiver of the makings, of the ability, of the stature of Davante Adams. And the reason the Raiders would want to do this is because not only do they have a relationship with the player already, but he is much younger and fits their window of their team, right? They are not a Super Bowl team this year, but in the next couple of years, they could be very competitive if they get that quarterback position right. They've built their team pretty young right now, so they could get themselves into a spot where they are very good in a couple of years. And Brandon Aiyuk could be a part of that core and that build, right? So this was very interesting to me. If this is something that does happen, right? I'm taking this seriously, but at the same time, this is fun to talk about. This is interesting. To me, I don't want to be sitting here talking about, oh, Brandon Aiyuk's going to get traded until it actually happens, because we saw the exact same thing happen with Deebo Samuel, right? Deebo Samuel said, I want to trade. I demand a trade from the 49ers. And all it was a tactic to get a new contract. It was simply a negotiation tactic to get a new contract from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and pay him so that he could stay on the team. Right? And this feels very similar for Brandon Aiyuk. But where it does actually, to me, separate from just baloney news, just phony news, to this could actually happen, is if the Niners were actually able to keep that Super Bowl window alive by still remaining a number 1 receiver on the outside of the formation like Davante Adams. And given Davante Adams' outright disgruntledness on that wide receiver show, it makes total sense. So that's where I'm coming from. You guys let me know what you think. It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView reporting, and we'll see you soon. Thank you guys so much for the support lately. Gronk, spike the like button and comment your opinion. Would you do this trade if you were the Raiders? Would you do this trade if you're the 49ers? It's Mitch. Peace.